I had a conversation with my old buddy, Mike Johnston, and we were just talking about some things. And then all of a sudden I was like, I want to get you back on the show. So what's a gear topic that you're interested in? And he said, well, I don't know how to tell the difference between different metal snare drums. So maybe we could do that. So here's the main topic. It's me and Mike hanging out. We're checking out 5 different 5x14 beaded shell, which is Ludwig style snare drums. We have steel, 2 different types of aluminum, and 2 different types of brass. So this is a real nerd fest. It was great catching up with my old friend Mike. So let's check it out.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I think it's the same tempo as the old days.
It's the only tempo I know.
Do you know what that tempo is?
Nope. Yeah. I wouldn't even be able to venture a guess.
I will admit, when I was doing the grooves for these snare drums, I went through your Instagram page, and what tempo does Mike play most often so I can make it most familiar for him?
I won't call out any names, but in the past, you would always alert me to, yeah, he's cool, but he always plays at the same tempo. And I'm like, what? No, he's a G, man. And then I would look at it, I was like, oh, you're right. Yeah. You identify that stuff quickly. And I definitely... I'll set my metronome. I'm working on like a YouTube thing or Instagram thing. Maybe it's just playing, and I'll be like, let's try a little 95. And then at some point, I'm like, 110 it is. And I always, I don't know why. I don't want to. I want to love some 95. It's good to see you, dude.
Yeah, likewise. Like the good old days. Welcome to the, what podcast are we doing? The Drum Candy podcast.
It's all a blur now. It's all a blur.
What is that shirt? No bull?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like every time I wear it, people think like, "Oh man, Mike's coming out with a t-shirt company." No excuses, no bull. It's just a workout company that, honestly, they're the only thing they make that I like is the fit of their t-shirts. And I came straight from the gym to here, so yeah. So I've still got my no bull on.
Shout out no bull, no bull or no bull, no. Is there a SHIT on the back?
Well, their full slogan, because they're very hardcore, is no bull, just the horns. So I'm just
all right then.
So I'm not proud to wear it, but it's the only thing that fits, man. I'm such in between medium and large that if I wear like certain shirts, they're like dresses on me, except for they're super tight on the arms, and then other ones are like a crop top and then baggy on the arms. And I'm just like, am I the most awkwardly shaped human being ever? I must be. So, but Noble, they're a bunch of folks that get it. they're all shaped like me, apparently.
I have no idea how to transition. So snare drums.
Welcome back. Okay.
So we have to give some background here. What started this conversation? I don't remember. I asked you what's some gear thing you wouldn't mind talking about, and you said metal snare drums. Why?
Yeah, mainly because I really do struggle if it's the Pepsi challenge and you're blindfolded, I really do struggle to tell any of them apart. And I think actually what really started it was me talking to you about why does nobody else do nickel over brass? Is that a Ludwig thing? Do they own copyright or patents to nickel over brass, or are people just scared to step on Ludwig's toes? And it's like, look, that's the Black Beauty. We don't mess with it, and let's just go in a different direction and do chrome over brass or something over something. So that was kind of what started this. And then, you had said that Drum Factory Direct has like a nickel over brass, right? Or a black nickel over brass. And so, I guess it was just that. I always wondered, is that some special magic recipe? Because when my campers come here, we do, I have probably, I think in the studio, I have about 35 snares. And then at some point we do like a snare drum shootout just so they can hear the different drums compare to each other, especially with the same mics. I think that's really important. Is a lot of times when you go on YouTube and you're like, I'm going to check out a Ludwig Black Beauty versus a Gretsch chrome over brass. Well, it's 2 different companies that did the videos, 2 different miking techniques, different rooms, different drummers. It's really not a fair comparison. Where here we can try them all out with me playing them with my mics, and nothing changes. It's all in the same 20 minutes, just like you did with these snares. So it's a really good comparison. So anyways, I just was kind of curious, back to the camper thing. They always pick out the Ludwig Black Beauty, like it's some holy grail snare. And I think it sounds good, but it truly is not my favorite. But that being said, all of my favorite drums are either 14 by 5 or 14 by 5.5, and my Ludwig Black Beauty is a 6.5. So I've never thought I don't like the Ludwig Black Beauty. I just thought like that drum, I like it in a different setting. If I was touring again, hitting the snot out of the drums, that would probably be my drum for sure. But the way I play now, it's just not my favorite. But anyway, so we started talking about that, and you were like, man, I've got chrome over aluminum. I've got them all. And I was also telling you, I don't know what these are called. Like chrome over aluminum. What's that called? Does it have a name? Is it chromium?
Superphonic is what that's called.
Oh, that's what a superphonic is?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. They just throw phonic at the end of anything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll set up what the experiment was now. So I had 4 drums that were almost identical, and I actually had to buy one. So this is going to be a good test of whether or not I keep the drum that I purchased.
Okay.
I won't say which one I purchased yet, but so I had what I have. So they're all, I have mostly Ludwig and metal. So I figured we got to go with the Ludwig style. So it has a center bead. I have a Superphonic. I have an Acrolite. I have a chrome over brass. I have a black nickel over brass, which isn't a Ludwig, but it has the same shell.
Okay.
And then chrome over steel. So they're all, I'll just grab one of them.
Does chrome over steel have a name?
No, I mean, it was the Ludwig Rocker. That was
okay.
the 90s snare.
The rocker.
So there's a Superphonic.
Okay.
5x14.
So Superphonic is probably what most of us might have encountered in like school band. At least that looks exactly like my school band snares.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is the Superphonic.
Okay. Oh. He's bending.
This is the Rocker.
Yeah, we had the Rocker.
Yeah. So
I mean, they
steel,
both look
steel, aluminum.
Okay.
Okay. So what did I do? Let me get back on the mic here. I wanted to be as meticulous as possible, so I took all the hoops off, all the wires off, all the heads off, because some of them had like 1.6 millimeter hoops. One of them had die cast hoops.
Okay.
So I got fresh 2.3 triple flange hoops for all the drums.
This is why you're you, buddy. I would have done it with. I would have been like, yeah, one of them's got a broken bottom head. Let's use it. I love it.
I put 16 strands steel wires. I figured less wires so we can hear more shell would be important. Plus, Ludwig traditionally sent their drums with 16 strands. Just a generic Drum Factory Direct head, so a standard snare side and a standard 10 mil coated batter. I used the exact same cord for the wire, so it's the white cord.
Of course you did.
I was thinking about putting the same throw-offs, but the hole spacing wasn't consistent to do that. So the variable is the throw-off, so you have to kind of ignore maybe some of the snare response in these recordings a little bit. And then what else did I do? I tuned them all as absolutely identically as I possibly could.
Okay.
Bottom head was F sharp. Top head, I started high at F sharp and then went down a step. No, I started high at A sharp, down to G sharp, down to F sharp. So we have 3 tunings that are still within the medium to high range. That's because I think once you get below that, it becomes a specialty sound. You got to start taping it up and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So they're as absolutely identical as possible. Wow. The Acrolite obviously is an 8 lug. All the others are 10 lug. The Black Beauty replica is the only one with 2 lugs.
Oh wow! Okay. So
all the others,
are the others called Imperial lugs, or what are those called?
There's a combination. Imperial lugs are these.
Okay.
Superphonic. Yep. It's like the high-end Ludwig. Then there's this is how you can tell an entry-level Ludwig is the bow tie lugs.
Bow tie. Okay.
So Acrolite and Rocker has bow tie.
Got it. Okay.
Those are all 10 lug. So I drove myself nuts. I put the heads on it. I tuned them. I let them sit for like 2 days, retuned them. I tried to be as absolutely nerdy as possible. So
I just hope I hope you did this for the sake of the episode and not, I hope I didn't cause you this much work by being like, man, I'm kind of interested in metal snares. Later, bro. And then you're like, cool, that's the next 20 hours of my life. Thanks, Johnston.
I mean, yeah, it is my job, but also it's fun and it's weird. And And I think I came to the conclusion that what I expected was, I mean, well, I guess we'll get to that conclusion at the end.
Okay,
But I know which drum playing it. I felt like that's the one I would use.
got it.
I don't
So,
know if it translated to the recording because I haven't listened to them yet.
the one question I have without spoiling, because we haven't listened to these together. And by the way, for everyone that's listening at home, Dawson put these into a Dropbox folder, all with very cool names like DGODG. So literally, he leaned on the keyboard. That's all he
Yeah,
did.
that's all I did.
Because I can see like one has a lot of E's and P's, one has a lot of P's and H's. So he leaned on the keyboard, and that became the name. So even when we're listening, we don't know what we're listening to. That's the
I have
whole
no
point:
clue.
is can we tell what these are? He also did this test long enough ago that he doesn't know what any of these are. And then we have videos that we'll watch later, so we kind of know, oh, okay, that's what I thought. And I got to be honest, from the tests that I've done here, it's really hard because all the tests I've ever done here, I can see the drum. I know exactly, oh, that's a 14 by 5 A&F raw brass versus a 1970s Gretsch chrome over brass. But I can't get the fact that I know what those drums are out of my head. So this will be a real blind test where we just have no idea, and we have to be honest about what we hear.
Yeah, I don't think the point should be to guess. It's more like just take notes. What kind of attack does it have? How long does it ring out? How fast does it die off? What kind of overtones are in there? I didn't hit any rim shots. Maybe I might have snuck one in by accident, but everything is dead center as much as possible. So you've got 5 notes with the snares off, 5 notes with the snares on, and then 4 bars of a groove or something like that. I try to play as consistently as possible in this, so I have no identifiers. So I won't hear anything like, "Oh, I remember doing that on that drum."
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about as nerdy as we can get. Do you want to start with one of these?
Yeah, let's start. I mean, since they're all named and Wave and Parker, why don't we just go top down?
Alphabetical order. This is D God Going.
All right. Man, first of all, it's so weird to have a signature wood snare because I gravitate so much towards metal snares. As soon as I heard it, I was like, that's awesome. That sounds like snare. One thing that I think a lot of by younger, I mean, how long they've played, but younger drummers don't realize is how much overtones actually get eaten up by band instruments, like by playing with a band. So when I hear overtone, I never think, go grab a gel, shut that down. It's like that won't even show up. Like that's the life of the snare. I love that stuff. So the first thing I thought was the purity of the overtone. There was nothing weird about it. It was the exact same. The overtone was the pitch of the snare. It just faded off. And yeah, it was like probably the cleanest overtone that I could ever imagine. It was beautiful.
I noticed, I mean, it's weird because it's the first drum, but long sustains, I felt like the sustain rang through the entire time. So the release or decay would have been way at the end. And it felt pretty big and full for a 5x14 to me.
Yeah. And I definitely could hear that the snares were, and that's one thing that I've always thought about Ludwig. So this makes me think that even though we're not guessing which drum it is, I don't think it's the kind of Black Beauty replica, because that's one of the things that Ludwig snares do so well is they're so snappy. There's so much snare no matter what you're doing. But it is crazy how much the drum takes shape based off the tuning. Because by the time you got to medium low, if somebody walked into a music store and they were brand new to drums and they hit that drum, they would have no idea what that drum sounds like tuned up high. It's a different beast altogether.
Oh yeah, I should talk about the mic. So there's a small diaphragm condenser over top of the snare, probably 3.5 feet above. There's a SM57 on top in the normal position, and there's another small diaphragm condenser 2 inches away from the bead of the shell, like aimed right at the bead of the shell.
Wow.
So we're getting as much of the shell in the sound as possible, and I mixed it pretty balanced. Everything is hitting the same, I think it was like minus 20 in Logic.
Any negatives stand out to you on that drum?
I mean, I would have to, especially if I was going to go lower, I would definitely want to tame some of that sustain, depending on the gig. If I was playing a loud gig, then who cares? But the gigs I'm doing more recently, it's a little bit more controlled, and with a close mic on it, that overtone could have been maybe too pure and a little bit too conflicting with what's happening musically.
Good point.
So that's something to think about, but we'll see what happens with the other 4 here.
All right. we on to number 2?
This is Epgelk.
Epgelk.William.
So Epgelk, what do you think?
I think that she means well, but I can't take her to the dance. I actually do hear quite a difference.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what are you noticing?
I felt that it was a little bit choked at the higher tuning compared to the first drum. Um, Not quite as much when you played the groove, but just in the little single notes. It just seemed like it couldn't reach its maximum potential. Then the drum came alive in the medium and medium low tuning, but I really noticed, especially in the medium tuning, that's the opposite of the overtone I heard in the first snare. That's got like a pitch bend somewhere, like a little wobbly overtone. Not wobbly like out of tune, just it has like, I don't know how to express it other than it's more wobbly. It's not as pure.
Mm-hmm. That was my notes as well.
What?
Yep, more complex overtones, but not as like pure and singy, and much
now we're
faster.
Judging wine.
Yeah, much faster and drier. I thought the short sustain.
Yes.
Now, I have this is the only one that I'm going to guess. I think this is the Acrolite because of that pitch bend and it's 8 lugs. That's my guess.
Okay.
Because there's fewer lugs, so that means the head is less consistently tuned. You know.
Got it.
That's my guess, and just the dryness of it. But I have no idea. That could be any one of these 5. Yeah. I would. So funny. The first drum I would have fun playing. The second drum I think would sit in the mix better because it just hits and quits.
Yeah.
That's kind of my guess, but
for sure. Yeah, it's such a weird thing, especially like the position I've been in for the last almost decade now of 98% of my drumming happens by myself, or the recording of it is always by itself. If anything, maybe there's a drumless track, but that track was basically designed to be so a drummer could play over it. The drums are going to sit high in the mix. So everything has to sound right all by itself. At least that's where my mind first goes because that's what I'm doing normally. But I also know from spending time in studios that sometimes when I just think the drums can't possibly sound any worse, the producer's like, well, come into the control room. And then I'm like, how does it sound so good?
Right.
Well, you're sitting in a very different position than all of my microphones. And it's being swallowed up by different things. So yeah, I do like the snare, but it's definitely 100% to me different than the first snare. I definitely can tell a difference.
All right, let's see if that continues with drum number 3, shall we?
All right. Well, I'm not scared.
This is folk rock.
Okay. First of all, it's not folk rock. I mean, it is, but it is PHOKRHK. So it's basically the Norwegian spelling. It's folk rock. Just a little bit of folk rock. Dot wave. Here we go.
All right, what do you think of folk rock?
It's it's weird because I actually feel like, and I would have to A/B them, but I feel like the higher tuning of that was higher pitched. And since I know you tune them exactly the same, the shell must have some sort of higher characteristic to it. Like the high tuning almost reminded me of like a Chad Sexton vibe. Like it sounded high. Now we're back to a pure overtone to me and snappy snares. But I think I liked, so far out of all of them, I liked the low medium tuning out of this drum more than the first two. What did you get out of it?
Yes, so the tuning was weird. So I made sure that the fundamental note of each drum was exactly the same when I started.
Okay.
So I could, and which was really strange because then I could go to the tension rods and sometimes they wouldn't be the same. So there's definitely something at play here with the physics of the metal. So I can guarantee you that the fundamental of all of these was A sharp, G sharp, F sharp, but whatever the mics picked up might be reading something slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, and I just went through that with a buzz roll test I did for YouTube where it was crazy how much the different shells, and they were all tuned the same, like dropped and, and the pitch would go all over the place. Now, obviously, some of them were actually different depths, so I expect that. But with the ones that were the same depth, it was like that drum produces a higher fundamental note somehow to the ears than this other drum. But yeah, for that one, I don't know. I felt like it was high in the high tune or higher in the high tuning, but it wasn't choked. I don't know. To me, that was almost like generically good. You know what I mean? It was like, cool, good snare drum. It was actually almost what I was going for when I designed my snare, which was like, I almost just need it to do its job. And to me, that drum so far has the least amount of character, but it just does its job. And it's, that's one of those drums that'll never embarrass you, whatever that is.
Yeah, I felt the same. I felt like it's comparable to Walnut for me, where like the annoying mids are just kind of not there. It's nice and bright, but also big and beefy in the low end. And I certainly
can't
can play
wait
that
to
drum.
find out what these are. I can't wait.
I'm trying to reserve my guesses because I don't want that to be the point, but let's go on. But I think the one before was the Acrolite. That's the only one I'm going to go on the record and say drum number 2 is the Acrolite.
All right. I can tell you right now I haven't quite found one where I think that's got to be the Black Beauty Cod. That's got to be black nickel over brass. So I'm still kind of confused. And I also haven't found the rocker yet. Like, unless it's number 2, which you think is the Acrolite, I'm like, when does the $75 snare show up? Like, I'm sure I can hear that. But so far, these all sound pretty good. All right, on to the next one.
Yeah, sure. A little secret to the rocker. That I got that drum because Shannon Farr said, "Get a rocker. You won't be disappointed. It will become your favorite snare."
Wow. Well, then that throws that. Well, I can't. I'm hoping the rocker is pointage. Poinij.
All right.
Not wave.
Drum number 4. All right.
I think you're messing with me. I think 3 of these are the exact same drum.
Nope.
Okay. So on the high tuning, I thought this was the acrolite. That sounded really dry to me in the high tuning, but it didn't give off acrolite features in the medium and medium low. And so and you know what? Acrolite features in my head are all invented. It's just like, oh, you just need that dry sound. But in reality, I don't think I've ever seen anybody play an acrolite without 9 pounds of tape on it anyway. So how do I know what the hell an acrolite sounds like? I've got one, and I still use the I've got tube lugs on mine. So so I don't know. That one's tough. I found it to be it had a little bit of the squirreliness in the overtones, just a tiny bit, not as much as drum number 2. But once again, it just this is turning into mush. And maybe that is the point of this episode, is like maybe we're freaking out a bit too much over where it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. What did you feel?
This drum I felt was what I would consider the perfect metal snare drum. I just said perfect. Balanced and pure, not too long, not too short, not too bright, controlled but not choked. Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I got to kind of go with you on that, because like I said, when I heard the high, I thought, oh, this has to be the acrolite. But it wasn't choked. It just didn't have a ton of overtone. You know what I mean? Like, it was a full snare wave file without the overtone. But then and that's when I thought it was an acrolite. Then when it got to medium and medium low, it actually opened up and came to life and was just pure and beautiful. And that's when I was like, wait, maybe this is the nickel over brass. But I didn't think that in the high. So all I know is snare drums suck. I'm selling all of mine.
Did we say this? Were we recording when you mentioned that you tune higher? So for you, it doesn't really...
That was in a voice note that I sent you where I was like,
okay.
You know, I just... or maybe it was at the beginning, but I don't think we were recording yet. And it was... Yeah, maybe the reason I don't think there's much difference in the drums is because that difference shows up in the lower and mid-low tunings. But when you kind of crank the drum up pretty much, they kind of all do sound the same. And even if they don't sound the same, what I've noticed, especially now, you know, over 100 camps deep of doing these snare A/B tests with campers, is that after about 3 hits, you just take on that snare. You know, It's like, man, it sounds like a snare. It's kind of like a pedal. When you get on somebody else's pedal for the first time, it feels like the most foreign thing ever. And then about a half a song into it, your foot has kind of figured it out, and it's just a bass drum pedal. And so I kind of feel like that with these snares, especially when we're dealing with similar sizes, same heads. And the most important thing, I think, would be the drummer. I've shown in clinics, I've brought people up on the stage to show how different my kit sounds when 4 different people play the same groove. So with you being the one to play it, just like you had talked about, you know, in our old podcast about how being in the room with Steve Jordan, as soon as he hit a snare, it didn't sound like the same snare you hit right before him, you know? So I think a lot of it, as crazy as it is, comes down to us and the care that we put into each note strike. I definitely hear little tiny differences. But you know what I haven't heard yet is I haven't heard a quality difference where I thought that drum sucks and that the others are good.
I will. So I don't know if you can see in my kit back here, but after this extensive metal drum extravaganza, I went with a deep 6.5 solid maple drum.
Yeah, you did.
You want to go with, it was like, whoa, there's a whole different animal.
Okay. Yeah.
Totally different. So that...
Yeah, I mean,
but then it becomes normal, like you said. I've been playing it for 2 days now, and it's like, oh, this is what a snare drum sounds like.
You know, you and I did. I mean, God, we did 250 episodes, so we talked so much about snares because it's the one thing that I think all drummers can mess with. Like, we always keep our kits, but we get new snares and we try out new snares. And I think if you have a great, and by great I don't mean expensive, but if you have a reliable metal drum that you love, a reliable wood drum that you love, and then maybe a couple size options, you're kind of set, you know, because it's going to come down to, can you tune the drum properly? Do you know how to tame the drum if you go into a session where they just say, look, that's just too much? Do you know what to do? Do you understand the drum and go, no worries, I can handle this? You know, like a floor tom, when somebody says, can you do something about that tom? Do you know what to do? Or do you just start turning drum keys, just hoping that you'll land on the right spot? So I think that so far I've been really blown away just by like they all sound fantastic. All right, you ready for the last one?
Yeah, I don't know how you say this. Quipayog. I think that might be Chinese. What is that one?
Wait, quip quipoiqua. It's QPOIUQW. Quipoiqua.
That's our last drums. Check it out.
Oh. All right.
All right. Last drum.
That's the Ludwig rocker.
Yeah, that's your least favorite of the 5?
It's, you know what it is? It's the drag that you do into your bass drum. It sounds cheaper to me somehow.
I love it.
I
I hope this is the drum I just spent $400 on. I hope it is.
Yes. Oh, I'm
going to send it to you for Christmas.
I'll buy it. If this is the drum you just bought, I'll buy it from you for what you paid, just to make up for me being a douche and calling this drum cheaper. But I don't know. There's something about that drag that it's not activating the drum the way everything else was activated when you played the lower notes. It's like it's the analogy we used to use about the Marshall amp that you have to turn to 10 for it to do its job. I feel like this drum did its job when you hit it, but all the other drums did their job in the little drags and the ghost notes in between the backbeat. So, oh God, if this is anything over $150, I feel terrible. But well, it just proves that they're all the same. But that drum stuck out to me.
What are my notes? Not as beefy or full as the others. Bright, not too ringy.
Yeah.
And a question mark may be good for recording just because of all those factors, not too much low end to deal with. Yeah. Not my favorite, though. Not my favorite.
Well, then I hope it's also not the drum that
There might be a drum for sale here soon. Let's see.
I'll wire it to you. I can always use one more on the shelf, and then people will be like, "Is that the drum that you and Mike didn't like? That's the one." I mean, it still sounds fantastic. It's just I don't know. There was something where all the other drums sounded incredibly consistent in their quality, no matter what volume you played it at. And for some reason, to me, at the lower volumes, this drum just felt like the drum wasn't being activated, which I associate with cheaper steel shells. So we'll see.
Oh, some notes about the construction. The steel shell is rolled. Actually, the Black Beauty knockoff is rolled. But I did a comparison with that Black Beauty knockoff with an actual Black Beauty. They were absolutely identical.
Really?
So that's why I didn't buy the Black Beauty, quite honestly, because I already had this, and it was like, there's no way anyone could tell the difference. but those are both rolled and welded. The other 3 are seamless.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
All right. Now, when you were watching, I mean, when you were recording this, obviously you knew which drums you were playing, and you told me you were pretty stoked on the Black Beauty replica, right?
Well, when I played them in a vacuum, like the day I posted that Instagram post just kind of goofing off, I put the Black Beauty replica up, and I was like, this is the perfect drum. Why would I even care about anything else? But doing these tests, that wasn't the one that, as I was playing, it was like, this is the one I would pick.
Oh, really? Okay.
The one I would pick was the Superphonic.
And that's chrome over aluminum.
Correct. 10 lug chrome over aluminum, classic drum. For whatever reason, that was like, okay, this is the drum I would take to a gig today.
Okay, so should I open the video files?
Yeah, let's go through the videos.
All I care about is number 5. I'm going straight. Chrome over steel.
Was it?
Yes. It's the rocker, baby. Woo! Oh, hot dog on a stick. I honestly feel like I can keep my job in the drum industry as a teacher. I don't care about any of the other ones.
Oh, shoot. Which one did I say was the Acrolite? The number 2.
Number 2. And
that's the Acrolite? All right, then. So
wow.
So we have 1, 3, and 4.
Okay, so...
Which one did I say was perfect? I said number 4.
Number 4. And that's the black nickel over brass.
Is it?
Yep.
Dang. World Max black nickel over brass. Killing. Always.
And the chrome over brass, which is what I play in Gretsch, that's my 70s snare, is the one I said just had the most pure overtone. It was just a flawless drum. And man, okay. So there's a little different.
Let's go in order. Drum number 1 was the chrome over brass. That was the one that you liked the most, right?
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Good thing Gretsch offers that. Number 2 was the Acrolite, as I had guessed. Number 3 was the Superphonic.
That's funny.
Which makes sense because I wrote short decay with full sustain. That's what I was hearing as I was playing it as well.
Okay.
Number 4 was the perfect drum, black nickel over brass. And then the last but not least, anyone want to buy a rocker? I've got one for sale.
Wait, is that the one that you just bought?
No,
okay.
I just bought the chrome over brass.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah, the one you can't have.
It looks like it has the olive badge?
Yeah, it's one of the B stock, so they cut the serial numbers off of it.
Okay.
That's a little tip. If anyone's looking for one of these drums for a couple $100 less, look for the B stock because it's only a blemish in the chrome. There's nothing wrong with the drum itself.
Wow.
That was a $400
that's a brand new drum.
Brand new, never been played, $400 versus I think regular they're like $700 for like an actual serialized one.
Especially if you're not like a super drum nerd, that drum was just pure.
So the question is, why do I have 5 of these drums? And should I have 5 of them?
Okay, we don't even have to answer the second question. Like, dude, you know that my snare wall's out there and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 12 snares in here, including a 16 by 1.
Oh, that you need for sure.
Dog. What? So I've got a Rogers Dynasonic in here. I have the drum that I spent $1,000 on during our stupid ass podcast to prove that stave drums sound like ass.
You love it.
I've got a Doc Sweeney 14 by 6.5 Gretsch bronze broadcaster, and then the drum that my wife got me on your suggestion. So anyways, we have these snares because we're nerds, but I need to ask you this. How much is a Ludwig Black Beauty 14 by 5? They don't do 5.5, do they?
No, it's 5 or 6.5.
Okay, so a 5 is what, probably around
$700-800 for an actual serialized one. B stock are harder to come by. They're going to be 700.
And then the one that you have is that from Drum Factory Direct, or can you get
We
one
do
there?
sell those. It's called the Black Dog shell.
Okay.
And we do actually, I think we can get the full drums made out. So this is, I'll hold it up here. Now, funny, there's something I wanted to mention. Some of these drums I would only use in the studio because they're unreliable for tuning consistency or the throw off.
Okay.
This throw off that comes with this thing, I had to swap. The original one that I had, it would pop off. If I hit a rim shot, it would just disengage.
Really?
So I had to go to the warehouse and get a brand new one of these.
Okay.
So this drum doesn't go out often for that reason. I can't have it popping. I don't know if this new one will hold better, but if you're going to get one of these, make sure you get the upgraded actual, like Ludwig style throw off, not this World Max thing.
Okay.
It's not my favorite.
Got it.
Same thing with the Acrolite. It'll just detune too quickly if I take it out on the gig because it's just 8 lugs and it has those bow tie things. Like, it was hard for me to get the high tuning on that drum.
Yeah.
But you know, the chrome over brass, and I was instant like, yeah, I could gig with this every day for sure.
Yeah.
It's built like a tank.
Wow. Well, I mean, if I can tell listeners this, I have a 14x5 chrome over brass, brand new from Gretsch, and it is awesome. Love it. But I have a 1970s stop sign badge that I got from a drum shop that I was trying to support in Ireland. And the guy was like, you know, are you sure you want this? It's pretty trashed. And I just said, the more trashed, the better. Because I just got rid of my vintage kit, you know, about 1.5 years ago now. And I have a brand new kit, and it drives me nuts how new it is. It looks like my dad took me to the music store and he was like, pick out a drum set, son. So I'm telling the campers, like, bump into it, knock some stuff over. So this 1970s chrome over brass, you know, you and I have talked about it before, but I don't think that metal ages obviously the way that wood does, but I don't know if the alloys were different, but it does sound different. And it's, I mean, you're looking at maybe $300 for a 70s stop sign badge, chrome over brass. And then would they have had I'm assuming there was a chrome over brass back in the 60s and 70s with Ludwig?
They stopped making, it was called the Super Ludwig. That's what it was called.
Okay.
I think that came out in the 60s. I'm not sure. Don't flame me in the comments. But yeah, that was called the Super. The Super Ludwig was a chrome over brass. But the thing is, to find a vintage one, $1,200, 2,000. Okay. It's like the most ridiculous. Aside from the engraved Black Beauties, it's like, why is this stupid? Because there just weren't that many of them.
Sure.
Famously, I think John Bonham said he never played a chrome over brass. So probably just hurt their sales back in the day a bit.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John. We're going to make a push, but it's all good. Don't worry about it.
But it's a killer drum. I mean, I've been wanting one because I have a Rogers chrome over brass power tone. I have another chrome. Oh, I have 2 Slingerland chrome over brass, but I don't have a Ludwig. And it was like, I know I'm missing something, so I just bought it. That's the one drum I had to buy for this. This is an expensive episode. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Well, the good news is you get to keep it because it was awesome. It was awesome. Now, before we wrap everything up, the one thing that most people never talk about when they do things like this is the feel. And I think the feel of a drum is almost as important as the sound of a drum, because if it feels good when you play, if you get lots of rebound and it almost makes your strokes easier, there's just like a pleasure to playing the specific drum. Did any of them feel different, or do you remember?
Well, no, because this is an important thing, which I'll follow up in a later episode. I put identical hoops on everything. So that kind of removed some of the character. Like the Acrolite had 1.6 thin, like thin 1.6. The Superphonic had 1.6. So they just felt softer originally.
Right.
The rocker I had heavy ass die cast on. So that was just designed to just punch you in the face and get out of the way. So it just kind of, and the black nickel over brass had die cast on top and triple flange on the bottom.
Okay.
So I had kind of already tailored these drums to give me a feel that I thought they wanted to have. Once I put the same hoops on everything, it came down to, what is the strainer doing? Like, is it holding the snares, or are they starting to loosen up as I go? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
But they all felt identical.
Wow. Wow. So the shell property probably doesn't have a ton to do with how the drum feels.
Heads, hoops, and the strainer. The strainer is I think maybe the missing link, because the chrome over brass, because it's brand new, it took a minute to get it. And this is something I don't like. So I'm going to show this. This is the new Ludwig throw off. And
Okay.
it clicks.
Oh, yeah.
So when the wires are on and you're trying to quickly change it, it's not the most fun thing.
Okay.
So which was weird because that was the one that lost tension. I think literally because it was brand new and it just never been used before. And same thing with the old Superphonic because that's an old one.
Yeah.
So the throw off was the missing link. So we'll go into that sometime later. Should we do our top picks in a row here to make sure that you don't want to buy a black nickel over brass?
I'm honestly considering getting one off of your guys' website because, like I said, I have the Ludwig Black Beauty here. I like 14 by 5.5, and I know Ludwig doesn't offer that. So my top pick is still the chrome over brass. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I don't know how we're going to improve from this. Number 2 for me would be the black nickel over brass. Once again, I thought it sounded wonderfully dry in that high tuning, almost like, ooh, I just got an acrolite out of a black nickel over brass. And then once you went to the medium and medium low, then I was like, oh, that drum has come to life and it has so much body. From there, I would go to probably the acrolite just because of its funkiness. If I needed something to just be a little kind of quirky, that would be my drum. Then from there to the chrome over aluminum. For whatever reason, the Superphonic I just didn't dig it that much. And then the chrome over steel. You can't be dragging on a chrome over steel. It can't handle it. I knew it. It just can't handle the drags.
Yeah,
but if I was, like you said, if I was going to hit the snot out of it, I'd throw some die cast on it and it would be perfect. Just the backbeat snare would be great. I thought all of its backbeats sounded fantastic. It was all the ghost notes and the drags in between the backbeat that I just felt didn't activate the full drum. What about you?
Sick, dude. I mean, yeah, I'm happy. I have 2 Superphonics now. I'm like, But that was the one that as I was playing it was like, this is the drum. So I don't know, man. Yeah. I think it's every day which drum. What confirmed for me was the black nickel over brass is better in lower tunings. That's kind of where it excels.
And that could be one of the reasons why I've never identified with a Black Beauty is because I'm almost never down in those tunings. I'm always somewhere between where your high tuning was and your medium tuning. I'm in between those two all the time. Mm-hmm. And so, the end, there's no way to get around the fact that the Gretsch boy has some bias where it's like, I don't want the Ludwig to be better. I'm sorry. But I got to say that chrome over brass, I don't know if I've heard a more pure, like you said, that pure overtone it's so pure it could get in the way of things. Obviously you could put, 2 pieces of gaff tape at the top and tame that down. But to me, it was like, you can't poke any holes in that drum. That just sounded so pure and so perfect. It was kind of the metal, dream snare as far as it will never embarrass you. No one's going to be like, that drum sucks. It's like, dude, it's pure. It's beautiful. I was shocked on that overtone, especially when you played it. I listened to it in my car, then I listened to it on AirPods, and then I listened to it with you with my in-ears. And that drum, every time I was like, that's got to be the Black Beauty copy. It's so perfect. But and I mean, it is what it is.
There'll be a Mike Johnston chrome over brass signature drum in the works. Is that what we're saying here?
I'm not saying that they're powder coating one right now. Because how do you make it sound better? You powder coat it matte black. There is a snare that I get to introduce to you that's coming out at PASIC.
Sick. All right then.
So I'll keep you posted on that. Keep you posted on the Matcha Company. And dude, it was fun to do this, man. I learned a ton.
Let me end the recording here. So yeah, we done? Thanks for coming on, dude.
You're welcome. And for anybody that ever missed the first time I was on this show or missed when Mike was on our podcast, we have always had an amazing relationship behind the scenes. So, unfortunately, we never got to end the Modern Drummer podcast or the MD podcast the way we wanted to, but that it never had anything to do with us personally. We've always had a great relationship behind the scenes. And this whole thing started because I reached out to Mike with a truly serious question about some things. And we just started talking about like, you know, metal snares and why does nobody else do a nickel over brass or a black nickel over brass. So yeah, man, it was a blast being on. And it's funny that we can go, you know, a year or two without doing a podcast together. And it's like, let's go.
Yeah. Listener questions. What do we got? Here we go.
Someone's in Poughkeepsie. Let's go.
So maybe we'll have to do it again when I get in the hoop world. We'll see. 'Cause I think that's going to be the biggest mind blower for me.
Count me in.
Because we have so many different types of hoop. We have no flange. We have single flange. We have double flange. We have 3.0 triple flange. We have brass.
I'll do it with you. If you and I both pick the same snare, I'll just buy all the hoops from you guys and we can do it together. Because that's the one thing I am the most interested in. I think I can make any snare drum eventually sound like a snare drum. I'm interested in what gives me the best feel. Like, what do I enjoy playing the most? I'm going to be playing this drum, you know, more hits than any other drum on the kit. What makes it feel good to me?
Mm-hmm. You know, a good friend of mine, Dave Throckmorton, every time he sees a single flange with clips, he's like, I can't get with that. I'm like, but you haven't played it yet. He's like, I just can't get with it. I'm like, all right, cool.
It's such a oxymoron for me because of how much I love the look of it. We tried that on my signature snare, and as soon as I hit it once, I was like, okay, cool. So can you guys send me some double flange, some triple flange? I was like, it's okay. I'll tell you exactly what it is. Single flange with claws is the Leica camera of the drum world, because the best thing you can do with a Leica is take a picture of the Leica with your Fuji or your Sony or your Canon. That is the coolest thing ever, is to take the picture of your Leica to show the world that you have a Leica. But then it's like, well, why don't you use the Leica to take pictures? It's like, it's not as good as the Fuji, to be honest. The Fuji's a tenth of the price. And so I feel like that with single flange. If I'm going to take a picture of my snare, I want single flange and claws. If I have to play it, I'm throwing those things not in the trash. But I'm with you, man. We'll try it. We'll try it out. We'll try it all
right. To be continued, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, buddy.